It's 23 minutes away from 12, and Brian from McTear's is here. How you doing, Brian? All right?
I'm very well. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning. Here we are looking at some of the things that have been happening auction-wise. But I was mentioning, just before we go into any others, I was mentioning a painting that I was researching and found had been... You know more of the story of this than I do now. You've looked into it. It didn't sell down in London, but then did sell cheaply. It just makes a bit odd. Tell us about it.
Well, this goes back to, I think many years ago, in the antiques and art world, there was a phrase known as London prices, that basically anything that you would sell for more in London, no matter where you sold it. The age of the internet now has completely changed all that, and it's just made the world, as people often say, in all walks of life, a much smaller place. Effectively, what happened here was in a London auction house in South Kensington in London, in September last year, this painting by Alexander Gaudi, which was actually poignantly his last painting before he died in 2005, came up for auction with an estimate of £6,000 to £9,000 on it. So the reserve price would have been round about £5,500 or so, okay, and it failed to meet the reserve price. The painting was then put out to an auction house in West Sussex, where it was purchased by a gentleman from Scotland for his wife as a present for £2,200. So effectively, the original vendor of the painting was quite happy to almost take what they would get for it, which sometimes you have to. You can't always get big prices for art, antiques, whatever it would be in auction. So anyway, he bought that. The gentleman stays quite near Glasgow, and his wife didn't like it. It was too big, so she duly instructed her husband to put it into auction. And that gentleman is quite a good customer of ours. He's certainly a regular customer of ours, and recognised McTear's Sunday Scottish Contemporary Art Auction as being the auction that he thinks is going to best sell at. And we sold it in January, in the second week in January, for a hammer price of £11,000. Now, it could be perceived that, well, yeah, of course, it's Alexander Gaudi, for those of you out there who know or who have heard of Alexander Gaudi, was a Scottish artist. So it could be perceived that if it's sold in Scotland, it's always going to do better because Scottish people will want to buy Scottish paintings. But it's not entirely the case, because I know you mentioned earlier on, it was actually bought by someone who lives in London.
So it went back down there again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all a bit mad, but the whole crux of it is, you were asking why that would be the case. People throughout the world don't spend hours upon hours or days, spend all their days looking through auction house catalogues online and in print and whatever. You have people, whether they stay in London, whether they stay in Shanghai, wherever they are, who perhaps have a liking for Scottish contemporary art. There's a particular niche there, and they'll go to an auction house or go to an auction where it's perhaps a dedicated auction of Scottish contemporary art, and that's what's happened in this case. This gentleman from London is a regular buyer with us, and hopefully you won't hear this show to know that you could have bought it in London for half of the price. But he has spent his time looking through a Scottish contemporary art auction catalogue, and that's what makes the importance about dedicated sales, especially for vendors, especially if you have something to sell. You want to, where possible, include it in an auction which is going to be a specialist auction, not just a general mixed auction. That's very much a thing of the past. The successes are not shown to be there. If you have a Scottish painting, an auction of Scottish pictures is where you'd want to put it. If it's a contemporary picture, an auction of contemporary pictures is where you'd want to put it.
It just seemed a bit odd, where, as you say, I'd heard before that London would be the place to sell these, and here proving that that's not the case.
It's not. It's as I say, the internet's got a big factor to pay for it, but it's you just have to underline the importance of putting putting items when you have them for sale, putting them into the right type of auction. If you put them into a mixed auction, of course you'll get a price for them, but you won't get the very best price that you could get.
Let's go to one of our listeners' items that has been sent in. Which one do you want to choose first?
Well, there's quite a few. One, a bit of a belated apology to Anna. We seem to overlook her in quite... We don't always get it right, but Anna, hello. I've sent you an email saying sorry that you sent an inquiry in about 4 weeks ago and we didn't get back to you, but I don't know whether the reply is going to be exactly what you wanted, but you sent in a picture of a dagger which your father brought back from the Middle East. I think during the Second World War. We've looked at this, and it's possibly Iranian or Afghani, and it's almost definitely not silver. In fact, I pretty much can say from the image, which is a nice clear colour image, that this would be pretty much effectively a souvenir bought in a market or bazaar or something of that effect. Value-wise, we see a lot of these, much the same way that you do see a lot of Chinese and Japanese works of art that are made as tourist trade souvenirs, and they have been for many years, brought into the country, brought into Western Europe. These tourist souvenirs usually turn out to be of little value. So this dagger in particular, it looks very gruesome, but value-wise, I think we're probably looking about just £50 or £60 or so. That was probably one of a number of, if you like, Middle Eastern and Asian works of art that was inquired about over the past month or so. A much more recent inquiry, one that actually came in, I think this came in yesterday. What I've been finding, Ali, as well, the text inquiries have come down, but the inquiries to what's it worth on the website, I think people are finding it easier,
right? Okay,
to do. So that's on www.mctears.co.uk, and you just click on the home page on the what's it worth button there. So we're certainly inundated with hundreds over the past few weeks or so, hundreds and hundreds of inquiries. If we don't get back to you right away, you can expect a reply within a few days, certainly at most. But sometimes it can be
a little busy.
A little busy, yep.
Right. Okay.
And so we have Mr. Thompson inquired about some walnut furniture. It's worthwhile, mentioning this. There's no fine antiques here. This bedroom suite that Mr. Thompson has inquired about is a bedroom suite that probably about 10 to 20 years ago there was a market for. There were many antique dealers who used to fill containers with 1930s and 40s furniture. The market for receiving these was in North America, Canada, also parts of Italy and other parts of Europe. People in Britain for a long time have not wanted furniture of this nature. You know, the type where it's maybe a large double wardrobe, you've got the gents wardrobe,
yeah, right.
Tall boy, dressing table. But nowadays, you're looking at absolutely no value at all for these bedroom suites. As I say, people in Britain are not really wanting them, and the international market has disappeared. You can blame large design, Scandinavian design furniture places if you want for that, but it's just the way the world's gone. There's a bit of minimalism in there.
But of no value, really.
No value at all, really, with that. On the flip side there, we've got one of your listeners has written in through the website again on a silver miniature collection. This is John Paul's written in a silver miniature collection, 100 greatest cars. Now, collector's items, it's worth saying again, usually don't start life as collector's items, like dinky toys and corgi toys. I'm sure you've got some lying about the house, Ally, where...
I used to have, yeah.
Well, you've maybe sold them now,
Somebody
I don't know.
disappeared with them, yeah.
Usually they would end up bashed, you've hit them off the skirting board or whatever, but it's the ones that, it's the dinky cars and the corgi cars from the 1960s mainly, 1960s, early 70s. They were made as toys, they were not made as collectibles, but because the ones that have remained in immaculate condition with the boxes in immaculate, the ones that they shouldn't have, they shouldn't have come out that way. They should have been bashed about like you treated your toys, no doubt. And but it's the ones that have survived that become valuable. So effectively, there, when you have things that are made as collector's items, people will look after them. No rarity will come into them because they were made to be cared for. So the value is not going to increase. The difference with this set here of the 100 greatest cars, these are made in sterling silver, and obviously the value of silver along with gold has gone up and up and up in value, and silver things are really popular to have. So the collection here, I think we're probably looking somewhere between £100, maybe even £150 or so for this set.
Okay, can we just stop there for a few seconds? We'll come back with more in a moment. The Beatles and All My Loving. It's the Ally Bally Show. Good morning to you. My guest today is Brian from McTear's. We're looking at McTear's, the Auctioneers, looking at some of the items. Brian's going to talk about a couple of others in a moment, but Nessie's just given us a phone. Nessie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. You're through to Brian. Tell us what you want to talk about.
Thank you. Well, Brian, I've got about 24, maybe more, the royal bells.
That's the bells decanters with
yes, the bell decanters.
Charles and Di and so forth.
Most of them I have boxes for, and I also have a set of 4 of the really, really old ones, you know, the brown ones.
Yes, indeed. Now, you'll be aware, Nessie, there's a big market for rare and collectible whisky nowadays.
Yeah.
Last week in auction, we had a dedicated auction of rare and collectible whisky, and that's what it seemed to be all about. That last week there was many paintings sold, there was many gold coins sold, but the whisky topped the bill. One bottle of Macallan made £6,500 in the sale. One bottle of Glenfiddich made £6,000. Actually, whisky out of the top 4 prices achieved of 2,000 lots sold last week were in the top 4. But unfortunately, Nessie, the Bell's decanters are not in that league. If you were listening a short time ago, I was speaking with Ally about collectibles. How collectibles tend to be things that don't start life as collectibles, but they become valuable because other items get used, or in the case of whiskey, it gets drunk, I suppose.
These are full.
Yeah, the problem is with them, not many people would open them, the decanters, and they do survive. People look after them, and as a result of that, the value in the Bell's decanters, whether they're royal commemorative, I recall there was one done for the Queen Mother's birthday a number of years ago, and on average nowadays you tend to be looking round about £50 to £80 for a decanter that's full, intact, with its seal and in its box. So thereby you're probably at the bottom of the collectible market when it comes to whisky, unfortunately, Nessie.
Uh-huh.
But how many did you think you've got?
Well, I've got 24 anyway. I've probably got more.
Well, that's not a bad little nest egg to be sitting on.
It's going to add up, obviously. If you multiply 24 by perhaps on average £40–50 or so, you could be looking at £1,000 or so for the collection. So
that would do me.
That would do her, she says.
Yes.
Well, if you want to get in touch with Brian, I'm sure then he can advise you further. But Nessie, at least you've got an idea now, all right?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you, Nessie.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Now, I know you've got a couple of other things you want to talk about, and we've got the news coming up as well. So can you hang on till after 12, Brian?
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Clyde 2. Life Matters.
Elton John and I'm Still Standing. Brian, I'm aware that we're taking up more of your time than we had planned on today, but lots of things coming in and lots of people trying to get through on the phones as well. We can't take any more phone calls. But what do you got coming up? What's coming up in the sale room?
Well, I was quite keen to just finish up on the collector's items aspect today, Ally, by mentioning about a sports memorabilia auction that's coming up later in March, on the 17th of March. It's a Sunday auction. So with the recent marketing and whatever, there's quite a lot of things have come to light. We've been inundated with football programmes, which on the whole, they're of very, very little value. There are some programmes that can make 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds or so in auction, but they're few and far between. Most are, even going back to the 1950s and 60s, tend to be of much smaller value. What people really go for are unique items that shouldn't really be about. Again, we're sticking with this. They didn't start off as collector's items. What I have in my hand here, I showed you this earlier on, is a medal made in 9-carat gold that was awarded to Celtic's Patrick McAvoy. If you're a Celtic fan, you'll be excited about the match coming on later this evening, and you may well have heard of his time, a legend at Celtic. He joined the club in 1917. Now this medal, it's inscribed on the back, the championship 1918–19, won by Celtic FC, P.J. McAvoy, in 9-carat gold. The gold value, that's very much in the news and headlines, how high gold is nowadays, and it's got a value of probably £70–80 or so in gold, but in fact we would probably expect this medal to make up to perhaps £1,400–1,500 or so in auction, just because of its rarity. Right. The auction coming up again is not just about football. Sports collectibles do span across many aspects, including football, rugby, golf, cricket, boxing, even Olympic sports memorabilia will be represented at this forthcoming auction. So please do get your inquiries in through McTear's.co.uk or the Text It service, and we'll come back to you hopefully with some good news on your sports memorabilia.
Yeah. And the date of that one again?
That takes place on Sunday the 17th of March, but entries will close for that round about the last week in February.
Right. Brian, for this week, thank you very much indeed. Hopefully you'll join us again in a few weeks' time and bring us up to date with what's happening. And I think when we see the amount of people that have been trying to get through in the phones to you, I think when we dedicate a programme just to people coming through and putting you on the spot. Yes.
That will be interesting.
That should be interesting, yes. Thank you.